Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm doubling up with the 2005 series X-23 and its 2006 sequel, X-23 Target X. X-23 is a female clone of Wolverine, originally created by Craig Kyle and Christopher Yost for their animated series X-Men Evolution. It wouldn't be long though before she made her first appearance in comic books in the short-lived series NYX, where, for some reason, she was a hooker that specialized in people who wanted to be cut during sex. Yeah, no really. About a year after making her NYX appearances, Marvel decided to explain her backstory, so Kyle and Yost were brought in to tell it in a 6-issue miniseries that proved to be so popular that it was followed the next year by a second series called Target X. Target X picks up literally the moment that the first series leaves off and also wavers between multiple timelines, one of which is during the time period of the first series. Considering they're all basically one story told by the same writers, I figured it made the most sense to cover them at the same time. So let's jump right into them and take this away. The comic opens on that time that Wolverine escaped from the Weapon X facility. For the uninitiated, Wolverine's bones were laced with a metal called adamantium during a project called Weapon X that was attempting to turn him into a living weapon. The process was so extreme and painful that it drove Wolverine temporarily insane, and he cut his way out of the building, killing everyone as he went until disappearing into the Canadian wilderness. This story establishes that the last man he killed on his rampage was this scientist named Dale Rice, who had almost escaped with a suitcase containing some important part of the project that he was hoping to save. But his work isn't all for naught, because his friend and colleague Martin Sutter here shows up much later to find his dead friend and what he's left behind. So Martin takes his research and his dog tags in the solemn duty of telling Dale's son, Xander. Wait, Xander? Really? You went from Dale to Xander? And Xander with a Z? Guess having him be X-Rice was a little too on the nose. We then skip forward to see the boy now as an angry young scientist with something to prove. Live, damn you, live! Well, guess not. Zanzibar here quickly establishes himself as the villain of the story, as we see him doing things like sneaking in to read his co-worker's personnel file and sleeping with Sutter's secretary, who he impregnates and then refuses to take responsibility for the child. Oh, and she's also Sutter's wife, on top of being his secretary. Double quadruple trouble? Damn, this guy's messed up. Despite his opening importance, though, he's not actually the main character here. Instead, our MC is Dr. Sarah Kinney, an expert on mutant genetics who is planning to bring cloning into the equation. Cloning, you say? You can stay. Not too surprisingly, what Xanthorpe and Sutter have been trying to do is find a replacement Wolverine and finish the Weapon X project Pop and Dale had been working on. To do that, they've been using what Dale snuck out of the lab in the opening, a sample of Wolverine's DNA. Unfortunately for them, possibly due to freezing Canadian temperatures that they were temporarily stored in, some of the DNA sample is corrupted or missing, and the workers are forced to improvise. Kinney's improvisation is to change that one little gene that separates man from woman, that silly little Y gene. Since their copy of Wolverine's male Y chromosome is damaged, Dr. Kinney decides to simply duplicate the X gene. 2 X genes. How appropriate for a mutant. Since this would rule 63 Wolverine, and since Sutter and Z-Boy are like many a gamer and see this clone as a chance to live vicariously through a more badass dude than themselves, they X-nayed the gender change plan. But, like many a mad scientist before her, Kinney decides to inject herself with her own experiment. Only in this case, that means she's impregnating herself, and so she's soon giving birth to a brand new mutant baby. Congratulations, it's a Wolverine! Only not. Also, how weird is it that it's already showing signs of mutation at birth? We know from Origin that Wolverine's claws didn't come out until around puberty, like most mutants. It also kind of contradicts a later point where they are frustrated at her lack of showing signs of mutation and decide to expose her to direct radiation in order to speed up the process, which does actually succeed, however horrifying it may be. From an early age, though we don't see quite how early, the child, now being called X-23 because she was the 23rd attempt at replicating Weapon X, is Damian Wayne into being the deadliest warrior they can make her. Largely, this involves training from this nice old karate master, Tanaka, though also, as we learn in the sequel, it seems to involve some kind of holographic training program where she's supposed to mimic the movements of Wolverine from something I guess they must have filmed of him once? Also, holy crap, the art looks so much better in the second series. Oh, this is that Mike Choi Sonya Ovok art, like in the intro to Messiah War. Nice. Part of X-23's development as the ultimate weapon also includes the fact that she's not supposed to be treated as a person, only as a weapon. So she has no real name and she's not supposed to develop relationships with anyone. Still, for some reason, Project psychologists say some human interaction is crucial to her development, so they allow Sarah to visit her. While supposedly doing what she's supposed to be doing and reading her The Art of War, she is secretly actually reading her Pinocchio. Get it? Cause she's like Pinocchio, I guess? Sort of? Her sensei also tries to show her some human kindness by speaking to her as a person, but only in Japanese. As it turns out, though, it's not a very effective strategy, as apparently Xandor the Burninator there can speak Japanese as well. Whoopsie daisy. So the Zedster decides to punish Sensei Tanaka by testing out a control scent on some of his blades. This scent, it turns out, is designed to drive X into a state similar to Wolverine's patented Berserker Rage. So when she smells it on Tanaka's sword, we see her eyes go red and learn just how effective it is. Damn, that's messed up. Also messed up is the way they lace X's claws with adamantium, the same metal lacing Wolverine's skeleton. Instead of doing it all at once, that shithead Xander, Sidhead, sends the other techs out of the room after denying her painkillers, and then pulls her claws out one by one, lacing them each in adamantium before returning them to her body. Ugh. Dr. Kinney saw this coming and tried to warn Sutter, but he's sure that he knows that asshole better than she does, so he just ignores her warnings. But we get all kinds of views into Z Nasty's hatred of mutants throughout the series, and he takes them all out on X, like how he repeatedly refers to her as an animal. It could not be more obvious how unhinged this guy is. With her sensei's death as a sort of sick graduation, they send X-23 out into the world to assassinate a presidential hopeful, for literally no other reason than just because he was someone hard to get to. In order to kill him, she disguises herself as a crippled little girl, which allows her to get through the metal detectors, and in an effort to score some political points, they have the target take a picture with the sad little disabled girl. She kills him between camera flashes, and then they must have gotten the trigger scent into the room somehow, because we see her eyes go red and she ends up killing the entire room. Damn. We don't learn this next part until the sequel, but she actually escapes by hiding among the corpses and convincing Captain America himself that she's just one of the victims. She then kills some, I'm sure, perfectly nice first responder medical technicians in order to disappear. Man, always such a dangerous profession. Considering this a successful test of her abilities, Sutter proceeds to sell her out as an assassin to the highest bidder, and so we get a montage of X-23 completing missions. Something the first volume emphasizes is the time limit of these missions, as X only has 22 minutes, the standard length of an episode of a cartoon series, like the one she first appeared in, to complete any of her missions and get back to the chopper to be brought home. The second series loses the emphasis, though, even going so far as to have X play the long game for Kingpin, where she pretends to play his niece until she's kidnapped by a wannabe up-and-coming mob boss whose primary claim to power is his ability to turn invisible. They hit him with some of that trigger scent, and X has all she needs to find him. X-23 is so good at what she does that she always completes her missions well under time. Until the time that asshole Zazamil decides to unexpectedly go on one of her missions with her. As always, she completes her mission with plenty of time to spare, but Zans, with all his hate towards mutants in general and X specifically, forces the pilot to leave her behind and face an AIM firing squad. He sees her die, but looks like she was just playing possum and proceeds to cut her way through all the men and make her way back to base on foot. Damn, X is a badass. At this point, Dr. Kinney learns that her niece has been kidnapped, so she decides to use her position to make a personal call, smuggling X out to San Francisco to use her unique talents to track down the creepy pervert who kidnapped her cousin and rescue her. I want to know though, where'd she get that Girl Scout uniform? Do they just keep that around in case of emergencies? The whole affair leaves Sutter very stressed, so when Sneaky Z hands him a paper to sign over the entire company to him, Sutter isn't like, yeah, this is suspicious. Instead, he's just all, "You're a good proxy son. I've been such a good proxy dad. I'm sure this won't backfire in some horrible and disastrous way," and signs the papers. Couple that with the fact that Rachel, you remember Martin's wife/secretary, finally says she's going to finally come out with the truth about her real baby daddy, and it looks like you can spell trouble with a capital X. Uh-oh, looks like Zygo meant it when he said he'd kill you if you ever talked, Rachel. X's mission this time is to kill the whole family and burn the evidence to make it look like an accident. Aw man, not the poor kid too. Aw, that poor Spider-Man. So Ziggy takes control of the company and reveals the true master plan of the project, a giant clone incubator to create dozens of more copies of X-23, numbers 24 through 50 it would seem. X manages to reveal what she's done to Sarah by hiding one of the family's pictures in her mouth, obeying her orders not to say anything to anyone. Sarah also learns that the son survived the attack, and between these two things realizes that X isn't a complete monster. But I think the real clincher is when Zack Attack comes onto Dr. Kinney, even touching her hair without permission. Ugh, you're gross. Stop touching her, you weird man. With this breaking point, Kinney decides to send X out on one last mission, a mission of revenge. Kinney tasks X with completely destroying the facility, destroying the clones, wiping all records, and bringing an appropriate end to Xander. Oh snap, that's cold, X. He is the real animal though, you're so right. She takes her time with this mission, walking out right as the clock hits 0 so she can do the dramatic slow walk in front of an explosion thing. Damn, X is a badass. But when she meets up with her mom so they can run away together, she suddenly goes berserk. It looks like the reason old Xandal had been creeping on her was to just put some trigger scent in her hair. Damn, that guy's a dick. When X wakes up from her rage, she's just in time to see Dr. Kinney give her last words, explaining the real name she had picked out for X. Laura. Man, that's just heartbreaking. And oh no, the letter that served as our narration this whole time. It's all scattered about in the snow. Don't let it get away, X. You'll never know the whole story. Man. The first series ends here with a quick flash forward to 2 years later to where X is on the streets of New York for the NYX series, but the second series takes a step back to the snow as we learn there was apparently another character here the whole time. This woman named Kimura, who is apparently X's handler, because for some reason X is unable to harm her. It's not really clear what the deal is with this, if they somehow changed Kimura's physiology, or if it's some kind of mental block in X's brain, or what. But X keeps finding clever ways around directly hurting Kimura, like causing a freaking avalanche. When she pulls herself out of the snow, instead of immediately heading for New York, X goes to San Fran to spend some time with family. Her cousin Megan, her aunt Debbie, and her aunt's new jerk of a boyfriend. It seems her cousin has had a hard time getting over the kidnapping, which she doesn't even really remember as having actually happened, and new dad isn't handling her nightmares very well. X joins their family and spends some time trying to have a normal life at school with Megan, which doesn't go so well because she starts showing preference towards her NYX faction sense, and her schooling so far has primarily been from a shady organization trying to turn her into a living weapon. So, in cases like where she tries to show her abilities to speak French in French class, she ends up doing things like reciting what seems to be a field manual on bribery and assassination, which their French teacher doesn't appreciate. Also, are their teachers Jamie and Adam from Mythbusters? Weird. All of this ends up proving a totally shocking, really bad idea, when it turns out asshole stepdad is a secret government agent sent to keep an eye on the family in case X ever showed up. When Aunt Debbie falls sick, he suddenly starts acting not at all suspiciously nice, even attempting to serve her some nice hot tea. Aw, how sweet. Tea mixed with trigger scent, that is. Aw, shit. Through a series of accidents, he ends up spilling the scent on himself, and that's the end of that character. Oh, darn. I'm really gonna miss him. Luckily, X warned Megan about the trigger scent, and she figures out what's going on in time to wash it off her and her mother, dispelling the scent enough to calm X-23 down. But then, Kimura shows up. Unable to fight her, the handler corners the 3 women in the basement, handcuffs X to a pipe, and threatens to kill Megan slowly and painfully unless X kills her first, mercifully fast. X instead chooses to cut off her own damn hand to escape the handcuffs, then cuffs Kimura instead. Damn, X is a badass. After letting Megan and Debbie escape, X cuts a gas line and uses the spark from a broken light bulb to blow up the whole house. We do learn later that Kimura's body is never recovered, so she's probably still out there somewhere, but we don't see her again in this series. X parts way with her family in order to protect them and proceeds to hunt down Wolverine. Instead of looking for a father figure though, like I would have assumed, she instead just hopes that they can kill each other because she's come to the conclusion that people like them shouldn't live in this world. Wolverine though apparently got a copy of the letter Sarah Kinney was writing in the first series, though I'm not sure when she had time to send it since she was writing it at the climax of the previous series, right before they blew up the complex, but sure, okay. His plot-convenient knowledge is enough that he's eventually able to talk her down, but before they can get to some real good father-daughter time, they're interrupted by old Stars and Garters himself. X then proceeds to tell her entire story to Cap and Matt Murdock while they're trying to decide what to do with her. Cap concludes that she needs to face prison time for her crimes, but after Murdock's plea that S.H.I.E.L.D. would just continue to use her as the program that created her had, in a little time to think, he decides to instead just let her go so she can find her own way in life. So, with a quick little nod to her new X-Men name of Talon, and a moment to finally read the letter from her mom, she heads off, presumably to New York. Though, I'm actually more confused now as to why she would end up as she did in NYX than I was before, but I guess it doesn't matter, cause it's time for the breakdown anyway. I remember picking up the issues for this series when they were initially coming out with only a vague idea of who the character was, primarily out of curiosity of what story they could possibly do with what was, as I saw it at the time, a lame clone of Wolverine. The first series on its own turned the expectation on its head. The writing is sharp and focused, the art, while I do find the character shapes a little weird at times, is clean and distinctive and pretty impressive overall. The story really manages to sink its teeth into you, and if you can't feel sympathy for X's plight, then I'm not sure you're human. The second series does feel a bit like an unnecessary sequel to me. The art overall I think is better, though it does have some moments that look a little awkward or wrong, like kind of the way Kimura is drawn just in general, and why is she sticking her tongue out there? Weird. But the story of the sequel definitely grabs me significantly less, feeling much less focused and kind of like it's flopping about for a point at a lot of the times. But even still, it manages to be a strong enough series to serve as a worthy follow-up to the fantastic first series. So I'm giving these series both a recommendation level of very high. If it could turn around my readiness to hate the character, I think there's going to be a lot here for just about anyone to latch onto, so maybe go check them out. The collected editions get 1 Trigger Scent vial and 2 Weapon X holograms. Yes, I know I only covered 2 series, but both series are also collected into a big mega collection, which is why this breakdown. The first volume has no special features whatsoever, though it at least does have the covers in place before each issue. The second volume has some alternate covers and bonus artwork. The complete collection has all the same bonus covers and art, plus a bunch more, and it also has a bunch of other comics where X makes an appearance. But, I'm gonna be honest with you, none of them are really worth getting the collection for. Although it does have that time X-23 met the female Scorpion, Carmilla Black, and as probably the only existing fan of the short-lived female Scorpion, this totally sparks my Laura Carmilla fanfiction. Just kidding, I don't really have X-23 Scorpion fanfiction. Or do I? Thanks everybody for watching. I know I've fallen a little behind on these videos, but I'm working extra hard to get everything out and on time. So we should be all set and ready to go for everything to continue next week. So make sure you stick around for that, and I hope to see you then. Right here in the Comic Cave.